So what Randy and I would like to do in this session is to contextualize the information that we've been learning the last few days and make some applicable plans for applying things in the jewelry industry, a manifesto of sorts. And this is a collaborative process because you will have things to contribute to it, and it's a darn good thing Kirsten's filming because I'm not going to remember everything, but we're going to go back to it when we're done and turn it into something public that we can share. That comes from us as a community. Collaborative. Collaborative and action. And Randy and I, it's funny, we're in a fun position to do this because we sort of sit at the intersection of things. On the one hand, sometimes we get criticized for being too corporate. On the other hand, we've both been in the industry a really long time. And we have to solve the problems not only on the ground, not only at the big corporate level, but from the middle. Because if artisanal and corporate don't learn to meet in the middle and have some conversations, we don't ultimately end up with solutions. And we end up speaking in our own echo chambers, and we don't want that, right? So, it's at the cross sections, right? Of great minds and great contributors and different conversations that solutions and actions can come from. Yeah, we hope to figure out where that all kind of crosses and be able to all work together as we move forward. Because there's a lot of great ideas here and a lot of passion, and that's only the beginning. So let's start with your collaborative. Some of this stuff is going to be really conceptual, like how we need to do things. There's the what and the how, right? Some of it is going to be prescriptive, like these are things that have to get done and we have to figure out who's going to do them. We don't need to figure out exactly who's going to do them today or how they're going to get done, but we need a plan. So we come at this from different ways. So what I did was, as we spoke these past 2 days, I wrote down sort of keywords that I heard throughout that I thought bore repeating to sort of begin this, a bit of brainstorming in a way. And this is sort of what I heard from the group. First, collaborative and engagement. I heard aligning values with action. Asking questions and digging deep. Supporting those that support our values. Continuing the journey. And I do want to go back to that because I think that's really, really important. Community and connection. Maybe those are the new 2 C's that we add to things. Traditional models are now opaque, and therefore new leadership needs to emerge from the industry. So who are those leaders in this room? Offering the industry a perspective shift. Talking about what the true cost of doing business is on all levels. Whether we do it on a small level or on a corporate level. And then finally, which I hope that many of you agree, that I think that honestly what I am taking away from today is what Martin DeWitt said the other day. That for me is, and perhaps it's because I am in storytelling and communication, but when he said, this is the standard. You guys, what you're doing, what we're doing in this room, that's the standard. That's luxury. That's uniqueness. That's the value. That's what, and we have to get the rest of the room, or the rest of the people that we're around with, understanding that we're the ones. We are the value. All the rest is a discount. Yeah, the true cost. I think that was so profoundly affected all of us when he said it. It showed up in my notes when Brandy and I compared. Many of you have referred to it in your own comments, so that's one of the big thoughts to come out of this conference. And we need to figure out a way to train it into the industry so we can bake it into the system. And then we'll start seeing some progress. It's funny, I was making notes of like, we need to do this and we need to do that. And then when we compared our notes, they all weave together. So now let's start tackling, with Brandy setting the thought process for ways of interacting with each other. Let's just talk about some of these things and how we do them. One of the first things, I need my notes, support organizations, not just by your own presence and contribution, but by recruiting others. Like bring others to organizations. Get your friends to join Ethical Metalsmiths. Bring a friend. It doesn't have to just be a refiner like I said yesterday. Bring somebody to the conference with you next year. Bring two somebodies. Support organizations because organizations function outside the profit motive and therefore can throw themselves entirely into the benefit again without worrying about margins. So ask your suppliers. Like we have so many red herrings, so many excuses. Well, I can't join EM because there's no membership level for me. Seriously? There's a donation button on the website. Okay, ask your suppliers to sponsor or to make a donation. Support MJSA's ethical design competition and all the work that Columbia Gemhouse does to then turn that into benefit for the community. Support Virtue Gems, support Moyo Gems. We don't just have to support things by buying something from somebody that does something for us and then they get to take the profit. We actually have some work to do to level some playing fields. So support and invite people to support. When it comes to associations, we tend to think about, oh, well, what am I going to get for my membership? Well, what are you going to give? What can you bring to that association by belonging to it? Our industry associations are absolutely moribund. But we could revitalize them with people like us pushing the, Monica's smiling because she knows how hard it is, right? Fine, I'll just go do ethical metalsmiths and try to fix it from there. But if we join these organizations and then push for change, eventually change happens. So support organizations.
I just want to add to that with this overall theme of collaboration. You have to join first, right? That's the first step. But when you're in, then begin to think about what I learned from the other organization and how can I bring that knowledge through? Not a competition, but what do I know here that perhaps could add value to this other organization? What can we work on together? What are the differences between us that we can sort of cross over and get double the value for our work? We tend to work in silos, it's just a fact of life. We work in silos even within this industry, big and small. But if we begin within this group and with our own organizations and starting to collaborate, then we can expand outside. But first, let's support each other and see what differences we can make within each other's groups.
And by the way, the you in this is you in the industry. It's I, it's we, but it's also, we're talking about messages we want to take to the rest of the industry as well. Not just the people in the room, because I don't want everybody to feel like we bear the whole burden of it. We're going to try to get more people to hear these messages. Adding on to Randy's point, if there's an initiative that you want to do, stop and see if somebody else is doing similar work first, and if you can support that effort. We have a tendency for people to pick up their passion projects and run with them. When the Jewelers Summit was announced, I must admit I was very cynical and saw that going nowhere. And I wanted to do something that would be more direct impact for the jewelry industry. And could my company have started it? Sure, but Susan wanted to do that. I was happy to throw in and support that. Find the things that are happening that you can support before you start something new, because there aren't enough of us working in this space. So we really need to combine our efforts. So that's a big plea to this community to figure out how to support the existing and then expand it and stretch it and make it, with your effort, things can grow. So that's another thing. Let's see. Your buying power is everything. So there's a lot of concern across the industry, there's not enough, I can't find this gemstone, I can't find that gemstone. Where can I find a diamond? I can't find enough Fairmine. Well, just start with what we have. So getting the rest of the industry to recognize that it might just be squeaky wheels right now, but there is a lot to buy. So reward companies like Riva and Hoover and Strong and all of our ethical gem suppliers that are here, and Will Nevins Alderfer, and I'm hoping I'm not missing anybody that I had in my notes, because you guys know I can't remember my children's names, let alone all this stuff.
I'm familiar with that. let's switch the language around as well. It's not about what is, well, if I can't get, then do I have to get Canadian? Is that my only choice? Or do I have to go lab-grown? Or is my only choice Australian? No, let's switch it around and say, I have a great choice. I know about this that I could do, and I've got this other choice here. Bring it all together, let's not, the negativity that we put sometimes out there, I think is to our detriment. We clearly have choices and options, and it's about how we change our language around what we do have versus what we don't.
Well, and like the whole casting issue for retailers, and Melissa's not the only one I've heard say this, I hear this a lot. Okay, I can show you how to set up a casting shop, I can train you if we need to, and I guarantee you, if you have a jeweler, they know how to cast. If you cannot get set up, then do something like what Elisa and Will did. Or talk to a local caster and offer to pay a premium for filling up the flask. Okay, I can't give you a full flask, but I'll pay you a premium for the effort that would have happened. Find local casters that can work with you. So if we do these projects one by one in small pieces, we will get to the point where more people are able to produce more good gold products, good gem products. The gold was the real issue in that one. So look for ways to fix it instead of being frustrated with the people who tell you no. You all know when you're out there selling, you get told no all the time, right? No is the language of sales. So you're gonna hear no a lot when you ask casters to cast for you. What the heck? Ask the next one. But we will find people who can, there's plenty of Fairmine grain out there. There's plenty of Fairmine fabricated products out there, and you can get somebody to make them with a little bit of negotiation.
I just want to add to the no thing. So my stepmother literally shits rainbows and unicorns. And she said to my kids a couple of years ago, no is so negative. So that's our philosophy. No is so negative.
I really like that. We're gonna have a whole other conversation about what it takes to become resilient human beings, but it's not this one. Okay. We wanted to talk about the fact that there are, another red herring. Well, I know I said this yesterday, and I'm redundant because I'm old, but if everybody asked for, good gold products, then there wouldn't be enough, which we know isn't true, because when people start to buy stuff, people come up with enough. We do have Fairmine Good Gold. There are other good gold resources out here. We'll get with Christina Miller because she's been working on this project. I know Christina Vieja knows good gold sources. So a lot of the good gold information already exists on the Amazon Aid website because they've been working on the Cleaner Gold Network. But let's get information out there about where the good gold is and what defines it as good gold. It might be a craft code gold. It might be because it's Fairmine, and there's some other projects out there that represent good gold. And if we just tell people, this is what goes into calling it good gold, then they can make choices. But we do have a list. It's not like there isn't enough.
Since you mentioned it, I'm just going to give a plug for Christina Miller and her group. I don't see Christina, but go to the living room sessions and bring a friend. Bring a friend. That is the best learning experience you out there now. So, and also just go. I'm sure this group of wonderful people can teach you a lot.
It's good plug. Again, let's support what's already out here. We need to throw out as much energy as we can. Some of this stuff's pretty technical, but it's really important. The entire jewelry industry is supposed to have an up-to-date anti-money laundering program. And okay, I know to a lot of people it sounds like just a bunch of paperwork. This is where, let me see if I can do this without getting all verbose. We work in small spaces, most of us at the artisanal level, communities and small groups. The world works in very, very big spaces, and we need corporate. So it's really important that we work on the ground and get things done, but it's also important that we understand at the smaller end of the jewelry industry that models matter, because it's how we get people plugged into a system. If we want to change the system, we can't abolish the system. Sounds fun, doesn't work. We need to create new systems, and we need models to implement those systems. So when we talk about things like documentation, there's frustration over how much paperwork people are gonna have to do for this SEC thing. This all goes back to formal documentation that the larger world needs to try to get a bunch of people to work together effectively. Is it stacks of paperwork? Yes. Is it sometimes done with a lick and a prayer and no meaning? Yes. But the reality is, if we understand how these documentation systems work, and we learn how to implement them too, they can actually be benefit for the artisanal end of the spectrum. Do ISO right, and a lot of this stuff comes from something called ISO standards. Do it right, and you not only fix a problem, but you set the system up so that the problem doesn't occur again. Do it wrong and you slap a Band-Aid on it. So, anti-money laundering paperwork, documentation. If people did it seriously and understood what it was about and didn't just treat it as something they had to do so they wouldn't get audited by the IRS, if everyone had great anti-money laundering paperwork in place, not just paperwork, systems, behavior, then when there's a sanction that would be good for us to support, you actually would have the mechanisms in place in your company to actually honor those sanctions more effectively. People are complaining, oh, we don't know what the Russian diamond thing's a whole other thing. We'll talk about that in a second. But people are saying, well, how do we honor this sanction? How do we honor that sanction? If every company in the jewelry industry actually had a system in place to respect those kinds of sanctions, laws, rules, whatever, then it would be much easier to push it through the whole industry and get people working on the same thing. So that could be a whole discussion all by itself, but if everybody in the jewelry industry would just get serious anti-money laundering programs in place, then we could push it right through that system when we wanted to support a sanction. And Monica, you're nodding. Do you have something to add?
Just that JVC, I was just going to say that. JVC actually has a template for independent, smaller entities that kind of walks you through it. Actually, JVC is an amazing resource for, and something that, again, it's hard to justify spending the money on these systems, but sometimes that is what will save us.
And it's a couple of $100s. I mean, look,
Yeah, that was inexpensive. Is Rachel in the room? Maybe Rachel could be ready with a mic to run. It's here. We'll get some mic action going in just a few. Did you have something to add to that?
Yeah.
Oh, I can run. I'm not that old.
I was just going to add to that, since Brandy mentioned our living room sessions and then JVC comes up as a great resource. Our next living room session is on the 18th, and we're actually going to have Sarah Yude and Tiffany Stevens as our guests for that session. So come join with all your questions. You'll have time to ask them. So thank you.
Yep. Perfect.
and by the way, GBC actually does need our support. Like, they add a lot of value to our business, but unfortunately they get into a very sticky situation where, like many of us, they are not supported enough. And they work their butts off, and they are the ones who are in contact with government, et cetera. And so I do think it's important that we give back to them as well.
A lot of the questions that were asked here about how do we get back to government with some of our concerns, you can go to JVC. They are in those offices of leadership expressing the needs and the beliefs and the concerns of the jewelry industry. And we have a group at JVC who is very amenable to the concerns that we're all concerned about here. So absolutely.
Sorry, I'm just going to add one little thing to that actually, because the main people that generally speak to government are people who have been speaking to state and government for years. The same, generally, old white cis men in the diamond business who, go to JVC, talk to them about what work and ask for a voice. Because if we're not going to, then the same messages are going to go back. So ask them that you want your voice to be heard as well.
Yep. And speaking of, let's talk about diamonds for a minute. So one of the calls that we want to put out to the jewelry industry is that the jewelry industry has to stop the practices that obscure the origins of diamonds. We've got to get that to happen. And they'll quickly point to countries, right? This is an interesting area where the jewelry industry could have impact if it wanted to. Because yes, the countries, we saw all the politicization that happened with the Kimberley process. We know why it doesn't work. The reality is the jewelry industry just sat back and said, it's not working. It's not working. I don't think it's working. And yet we had a lot of old white cismen in power sitting at that table that could have insisted on changes. We need to call them on it. We need to get the industry, and that's not a small ask. That's a big ask, but that's something we need to take out there as part of our manifesto. Because some of these problems could start getting solved if we stopped obscuring the origins of diamonds and as an industry insisted on methodologies that allowed us to know where they came from and didn't let them all get scrambled in India, which is everybody's excuse.
How the heck do we do that?
I don't know, but we first demand it and then we start talking. And we use our privilege wherever we've got it, because we do have some in this room. We can pick on Mark all day long and he'll do everything he can. He can't do it, but he can introduce us to people and will. He can give us advice, and he gives great advice. There are a number of us that have enough corporate exposure that we can start talking to people and rally people.
Sorry. So I was like on some tweet storms this spring, and I was in the Guardian about this twice. About this issue, and I met with Treasury officials because I was so mad. What they said was, we hear from industry that it's impossible. And I was like, that's what I did too. And I was like, you tell me when I need to come in, and I'll explain exactly how to trace diamonds. to you. And there's a whole industry of people tracing cotton from all over the world.
We can trace oranges.
We can trace fish. I mean, come on. And I get in trouble with the diamond industry when I say that, but hey, they deserve it. But one of the reasons I was kind of pushing Brad yesterday about who precisely needs to hear from us, because I think we need to start having our voices trained on them. Because if the Customs and Border Patrol folks or state says, you're not going to get a country, the biggest market in the world, thanks very much, without labeling at least country of origin where it's mined, that's going to force change, and suddenly it'll be possible. So
none of this is impossible. We can also lobby together. We kind of wait for the jewelry industry associations like JA to go lobby, and all they're going to go lobby about is tax law. But we can, and there are enough of us in the room that know how to put those groups together and head off to Washington and march about in the Capitol and get meetings. And so those are some things we can do, is start speaking at the level of government. But back to the jewelry industry. The jewelry industry is genuinely the barrier to this happening. So it's time to call us on the change.
So, admittingly, this is where probably the doubt in me comes from, because I worked for De Beers for the beginning of my career. So I know exactly why you can't figure out the origin, and that is because there's a few companies in this industry that they will decide, in no other words, they will decide when they want to tell you when. So I'd like to try to maybe, as an action item, let's get some of us together to talk about how do we communicate with De Beers. How do we, Avos is now out of the equation. We're not going to be able to do that, but I really desperately want to figure out how to bridge this gap, and I do believe it is in communication. I can't do it alone, but I do think that it is the elephant here, and we have to somehow figure out how to bridge that gap, and it's only going to be by talking with them, not at them, and not continuing to make angry state points. If we're going to change this, we have to kind of kill them with kindness, I think.
Well, and engage World Diamond Council. We need them to have that conversation. Yeah. Well, it is the same.
Yes, now
Never
never
mind.
all this.
So that's one of our action plans.
Well, there's adjournment in theory tonight. Yeah.
That's a private event though, that's,
You can't go after
we can't go after them. We've got to engage in real conversation. If it's bumping, I mean, it's fun to go on a rally. I've marched so much in my life, it's not even funny. But some systems need to just get solved from the inside. Because we are yelling. And I can tell you exactly how many people are in this room right now.
Is it a private conversation then?
It's not necessarily with the people who are at the Dorman and Theories party. It's a conversation that needs to happen between organizations within the jewelry industry, many of which are here.
I just want to say, we can't go after them, but in the circumstances of Tuesday's protest in Morangi, we can ask World Diamond Council to help keep people safe.
Oh, absolutely, we can always ask for that. But I'm just saying for this conversation where it's time for the jewelry industry to insist that we start knowing country of origin for mined products, to stop being a barrier to that. That's going to happen at a higher organizational level, and that means we all need to be prepared to sit down and really listen to each other, give each other the reasons and benefits, and work for change together. He wants to like a microphone. That doesn't mean we have to do a bunch of compromise. That just means we need to get them to understand it needs to be done. Negotiation.
Not compromise.
I think so. Thank you for bringing up this. I just would like to say regarding requesting origin of diamond from from gemologist perspective, I guess it is mandatory and really necessity to demand as a consumer, as a jeweler, to request origin of diamond color stones. Is happening the same thing what happened, the darkness of the artisanal miners of the diamond situation is, it is happening into the color stone. Pretty much the demand has shifted due to whatever the diamond crisis happened, the darkness of the diamond, the black diamond. I was there on the retail. So the shift of color stones is one of the reasons people demanding color stones is the reason, is one of this to avoid the conflict diamond. But we still, through the the color stones, this situation is happening too. And in terms of like where I come from Ethiopia, right? We have a beautiful sapphire discovered in recent years, but it has deemed and nobody even knows it. Has been sold as, Thai, Sri Lankans. So this demanding origin of your stone, as a consumer, as a jeweler, you should ask where your stone is coming from. Where we're putting the work as ethical, like some of our group, we're like, that's one of the reasons we're working in the ground to teach people where we're finding our stones, where it is at. So every gemstones, from the molecular perspective, from certifications, they know where it comes from. It has its own identity. It has like its own fingerprint. Diamond come from South Africa, from Botswana, from Sierra Leone, from Congo. They have their own identity. GIA knows, most institution knows. They know how to identify as the same as ruby, sapphire, emerald. So I think everybody should demand where their stones are coming from, and we should be the voice asking that and educating our consumers, our designers. And
It's also, again, changing that dialogue, changing that language, being the voices that say, yes, we can, no, whereas the voices have so much been, we can't, there's no way. Come on, more voices need to say, yes, we can.
It might take 10 years, but the time's gonna go by anyway. So, might as well start now, right? We can start working on this. And included in that, I think that we should have an industry call out. And by the way, if you guys disagree with any of this stuff, say, I don't think that's one of our call outs. We don't, but I'm proposing an industry call out that there also be a diamond of origins protocol that's applied to lab grown. And that there be a way of, we can't, trace recycled diamonds back to their source. And, recycled diamonds don't affect the communities, they don't benefit the communities of origin. But they're going to get recycled anyway, and we're not gonna throw them away. So then we also need an industry dialogue around what is post-consumer recycled, what is industrial recycled, and what is, sneaking stuff into the supply chain recycled, because there are some differences. So we need some industry dialogue and knowledge about what recycle is really about, what it means, and how it can be beneficial and when it's not. And I always propose, at least if you're, buying, well, that's recycled metals. Let's finish the recycled diamonds part and then just something to add there.
I was just gonna talk about certification.
Do you want to do metals now, or are we on diamonds still?
I think it's just kind of all of it, right? Certification is only the beginning of, being able to say this is a recycled diamond, or this is, the origin of a lab grown, right? Those are only small pieces. So I think my point is that certification is a great beginning, but unless you do your due diligence on the things that you also care about, what is under that certification? Is there an environmental component? Is there a traceability component? Don't just take it at the surface level. Certifications are great starts. I've worked for 2 companies. They're not made for all, so also find the certification that works for you and your business. But again, due diligence is not just a buzzword, and certifications aren't your only answer. So those 2 combined and asking questions are sort of where you can be at your most assured when you're talking to others.
And that kind of took us into our recycled and refined metals thought process, which is that we need some really clear guidance for the jewelry industry on the recycled metals piece. And again, what is post-consumer, what's post-industrial, and what is, snuck into the supply chain. I always propose that an SCS certified recycled metals refiner is going to be your superior choice. And then Brandy always reminds me, but that doesn't mean it's perfect. So
I actually had a personal experience just yesterday. I learned about a refiner that a client of mine wanted me to help them communicate about, that their metals are recycled gold, blah, blah, blah. I didn't know until yesterday, because this refiner happens to be certified at the wazoo. I can only go back now to this company and say, well, we're gonna have to look at this very differently and communicate it, because all of these dozens of certifications are not going to tell your story correctly, and they're wrong, quite frankly, if you want to talk about ethics and values and things like that. So I'm learning every day. I just learned that yesterday. So again, it's kind of just keep questioning and keep learning.
So then that takes us to another thing that's imperfect, but still in the right direction. And I hope you're hearing that theme. Imperfect is fine, because perfect never happens. So let's stop arguing with each other about whether, this is kind of in our room. This is family talk. Let's not argue about whether one thing is better than another, or good enough, or bad enough, or if somebody's doing something that's more important than somebody else's. It's all moving in the right direction. So, imperfect, but really good. This idea of the fair mind credit. We know that, and Christina Vieja gave me a great example of this, and I'm stealing it everywhere I go, but I promise I will credit you. Carbon credits. How you treat them. Okay, carbon credits, inherently, they are not by their nature good or bad. How we use them will be good or bad. So carbon credits can give you the opportunity to commit a sin, cover it up. Commit a sin, cover it up. So that really stuck with me. And I've heard people already saying, with fair mind credits, well, is it going to be as bad as carbon credits? Well, how bad is that? How do we treat it? So is it perfect? No, but it's a fascinating idea to get more money into the fair mind communities so we can get more minds up to standards and get more of that better gold to market. So support schemas like this fair mind credit, but let's talk about it in all its honesty. Let's do, let's talk about what the potential downsides are and then really encourage people to do it the right way. But let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. So that was another call out.
It gives you a better story also. Instead of just saying I bought carbon credits, what do you buy them towards? What change are you making by buying those carbon credits? Is there a village in the Himalayas that is now, not using, bad coal and changing over their systems? Great story to add to what you're talking about. So don't just buy, ask.
I thought somebody had their hand up, I wanted to see it. Somebody had something to throw in about that one, I wanted to hear it. Small mine-to-market models like Virtue Gem, Casa Collab, Moyo Gems, they're working. Oh, now we have a new project with us bringing that project. And it's the first really formulated one in Darwin's that we've seen. They're working. So we are going to call on the jewelry industry to recognize what these projects are, get the news out there about the projects, and then also encourage people to start more projects like this in more regions. So each of these organizations has some limitations in terms of how much funding they have to expand at the moment. Can you help them expand with your funding? That's the first thing you should ask. If they don't have the other capacity to expand, and that happens, then think about starting your own. But always start by seeing if you can support the ones that exist first. So, but these mine-to-market projects, which came out of Susan's idea for this conference and bringing everyone together, this has been the spark of all of these initiatives. So we want to get that out there as a call to the jewelry industry to have them recognize they actually can't know exactly where all of it came from. What else did we have on here? Oh, just to reinforce again, the Martin rule. Stop talking about premiums and giving excuses for charging more for good gold or good diamonds. Flip the script and talk about why the cheap stuff is cheap. And I think a lot of people can work with that.
You know why you're paying more for organic, and you believe the label, right? But you're willing to pay more because you feel better about it. That's what you're offering. You're offering a product that people can feel better about, and who doesn't want to feel better about what they're wearing and bragging about and showing. I want to add one thing, and Mark, maybe you can talk about this, but we haven't spoken yet about the circular economy and sort of how, and so I just want to suggest maybe next time we begin a conversation about the circular economy and how we can make that a part of our systems, as far as, if we're going to add that to our environmental discussions. I think it's really important that we start bringing these products around, and that's also part of our story about giving our, what we love down to our children or our grandchildren and how that sort of stays in the system. And let's make our business more circular.
One of the other big things we want to put on the manifesto, I see two really big, difficult, heavy lifts. One was the diamond country of origin thing. We've got to figure that out. We've got another big lift that needs to happen pretty fast, and that is working to get the SEC to recognize some kind of designation for artisanal miners that will allow them to sell to companies who sell to companies who sell to public companies without getting trapped outside the system. So it's another one of those, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. We want public corporations to be accountable for their carbon emissions. We will continue to worry about how much they will scam the system with their carbon credits, but it's better that there is at least some oversight. Our work right now, and it needs to happen really fast, is to create the exemptions or the designations necessary for artisanal miners not to get hurt. And this is going to happen, I don't know, and Scope 3 is up for some discussion still. Mark, do we have to have it done by summer?
2023 fall for Scope 3.
Okay, so we have to act fast. So that's something that if anyone wants to engage in this discussion, let me know. I'll try to pull together some talking groups. We can march off to Washington if we need or whatever, but we need to carve this out because we saw what happened with Dodd-Frank. Good things came out of Dodd-Frank and bad things came out of Dodd-Frank, and we can't, as I think it was Mark that said it have this end up being, in effect, an embargo on small miners.
By the way, I made a comment before about old white cis men. And I just wanted to take that back for a moment. It's not all. And because I was looking over at Eric, and, no, but just like, the work that you've done to motivate a whole, like, his problems with the old. I meant the beginners, the originators of this sort of stuff. Sorry, now I'm gonna dig myself into a fucking dynamite. But anyway, I just wanted to give credit to those who were and are at the beginning of this and how important your work has been, so thank you. Credit to you.
So I don't have any problem talking about where power sits and where it doesn't and naming it. And I hope that all of us as a community can model not being sensitive about it. That's what gives us the freedom then to use whatever privilege we have among us to make the changes that need to make. So, cheers. One last thing we had on our checklist was speaking also to the environmental issue, and some things that Mama Pauline said yesterday, is that we need to invest in the equipment, like the equipment drive that Susan's hopefully gotten enough response to today. Susan still wants more response to the equipment drive instead of the rest of us. So when we're thinking about the equipment drive and money that's given to support miners in their efforts, we also need to be thinking about getting them in the right equipment now. Their carbon footprint is, as was pointed out yesterday, infinitesimal. They are not the carbon problem. Everybody likes to talk about dirty artisanal mines, and guess what? That's not what has us in this situation environmentally today. But we do want to make sure that as we're investing in these mining communities, that we put them in the kind of equipment that will not have them in trouble, 8 years from now when they're trying to scale and they have to prove something about their carbon footprint. So let's help them invest the right ways by supporting their growth initiatives. So that was another call out that we wanted to take from this conference. What if we, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, does anyone else want to add as we
Yeah,
put
what we
together
missed.
this manifesto?
It's our manifesto. Jen. That's a microphone for Jen.
I was just gonna say, the other theme that really spoke to me and was really a thread throughout a lot of these panels and presentations is bottom-up approach. And I think that approach is the only way we're going to really protect and empower the mining community. And so that approach, I think, is so necessary in this SEC discussion as well. And just for the equity of, this whole supply chain.
When we're developing businesses, we talk about bottom up, top down. That you really can achieve great things when you do the right bottom up and you have a good model as well. And bottom up, top down doesn't mean disempowered, empowered. It just means constructing the solutions so that we can implement them broadly when they're put together. And that's a good thing for us to be thinking about, is how do we do this both bottom up and top down. But I agree that most of the really effective work that is being done needs to be done at the source communities.
So I talked to a few people while I'm here because I'm writing a book, and I said, what's the one thing that you want the public to know? And I'll attribute this to Will. I think it's a wonderful phrase, we need to raise all voices. I think that was on your list.
Well, and I can tell you when Susan first started talking about putting this conference together, what she said that really resonated with me is, we can't keep having these conversations with only a bunch of white jewelers in corporate jobs in the room. She wanted to put together a conference that brought all the voices to the table. And that is the essence of this conference from its origins. So, yeah, raise all the voices.
My point is very similar. The phrase fair living wage always feels like it falls short to me. And I think today, maybe the reason why I was able to understand better, it's like a metric that is being put on from outside. And in the movie that was shown, that woman talking about, oh, we just can't know it. And all I could think was, well, have you asked communities? And I don't know how that is done at an academic level. And I was like, the model that Voss described is so inspiring because that is exactly what is being done. And I feel like we need an expansion of our definition of what is acceptable from the community, the source communities themselves. What not just acceptable, but creates a standard of living that everyone feels good about, that they feel good about, that they don't just have a fair living wage or a subsistence, but a level of comfort that all of us take for granted. And so I don't know the words to put it in at this point, but I feel like we have some maybe people who've thought a lot about it in the room, and that's where I'd like to go.
So I don't know if more Peruvians have been to this conference, and I feel super happy to be here, honestly, because one of the words and the key points for me is connection, and this is what I want to keep. This will be my manifesto, that of course more Peruvian jewelers, manufacturers, which some of you know are very huge, are able to come to this conference in the future.
Hi. I've seen my business totally different than it was 10 years ago. And the observation is where there's demand, supply always follows. That's in diamonds, everything else. When I say my business is totally different, is the model. 95% of my clients are women who built up world-class brands and international brands being outside of the jewelry system. They didn't come from the jewelry industry. And I didn't create this, I just watched it and benefited from it. So one, they were able to tell their own stories, mostly I deal in antique diamonds, so that's going to be my thing. And I see this is extremely difficult, but I'm not sure exactly. All I just wanted to add is I've seen a whole model change dramatically, but that's on the demand side. The supply side is still very traditional. And that's really where the challenge of a lot of this comes.
Well, and maybe that's something, I thought of, those thoughts gave you some additional thoughts to add to it, which is, and it's another one of the big asks, the jewelry industry keeps hoping that consumers won't start pushing too hard for transparency. Instead, we should be inviting the consumers to push us hard for transparency, because all we're doing is kicking this ball down the road. But if we were all engaged in encouraging consumers to ask difficult questions of us. So it's another flipping of the script, but it would be a powerful way to drive some change. So that could go on there.
We're also consumers, so we can't separate ourselves either, right? How do we buy? How do our children buy? How do our friends buy? We are all part of the same community, so let's think about how we would do things and talk to others that way.
Rachel?
Oh, Anna Barrio. I stole the microphone. Hi. One of the things I've been thinking a lot about is I think that this group is very involved in sort of communicating the story of ASM to consumers, and I think as we try to decolonialize that story and remove the sort of victimization of ASM as like the risk factor within our industry, I think we as a group could learn a lot from the artisanal mining community about how to tell that story and sort of harmonize the way we tell that story to give it a lot more strength, because I think a lot of consumers come to this with a lot of assumptions about what mining is and with a lot of assumptions about what not mining is. And in order to enable potential with our industry, we have to be prepared to give direct voice, which I think so many initiatives here are trying to do, but that we can be more cohesive in how we're able to present the ASM story, through ASM voices to the broader U.S. consumer.
That's an excellent thing to add. There were other hands up.
I love what everybody's saying about connectivity and that, and acting as a voice together, and the diversity here is awesome. By the same token, I think if we all dig deep, we're all coming from kind of the same place, which is our heart. And simple question. Can we get an email list of everybody here sent to us?
Absolutely.
So we can communicate with each other?
If you want, we can start up a forum that we can all share, or is there one already?
Well, there's this WhatsApp group, I didn't start it, so I don't know, but it's going around and pictures are being shared and stuff, and there's lots of hearts and stuff like that, and maybe that's the beginning of this.
But literally just.
We can stick a forum on the Chicago Jewelry Conference website, we can,
Or just
we can
just
do
an
a,
attendee
we can certainly share the email group, the list, and if you guys want to, if you guys all agree, I guess we have to be responsible to, all of the rules around privacy, we're gonna have to ask the whole list if they're okay, let people opt out that want to opt out, and then we can share the list, but certainly we're willing to do that work.
Yeah, that seems good, because, sort of the trajectory of these conferences is, it all starts to come together at the end. And you realize who you didn't talk to, who you didn't get in touch, and, it would be nice to be able to reach out and have that intercommunication and lean on each other.
We can assign it to Kristen, because she's on a plane right now.
One of the things I learned when I was in the corporate world, a shock to me, is that, you have these outrageous ideas of your own. And then if you sit in a room with 6 people who also are at that level, and you sit there and talk and kind of work together for a couple hours, you come up with these ideas that none of you would have come up with independently. They're killer, and so as you harbor your own information or you push it, you're waiting, you get to ask that question, you can be learning so much in that process and sort of really increasing the level of effectiveness. So anyway, that's my
Eric and, before Fonz's hand went up, I saw Eric's and Toby's. We're good on time.
I'm not sure that this fits in with your.
The party doesn't start till 7, okay?
Yeah.
And if there's wine in the back, then somebody can grab it now.
I'm not sure that this fits with your takeaways, but in a lot of the presentations I've heard here, I think we're all looking at things and saying that the supply chain maybe isn't as equitable as we would like, and how do we address some of those things. But then I do hear things like when I hear the stones instead of exported as rough, they're cut there, or made into jewelry, and that adds value. It only adds value if you can sell it. And all of you makers are the ones that project that value. So you're a critical part of this, and I think we need to recognize that, because we can do all those things at the source, and it won't add 10 cents more if that story isn't told by the retailers here.
Yeah.
Right.
So again, just thank you for this incredible conference, and wherever Susan is, it's an amazing congregation of thought leaders and passion. And one of the things that I think is, and Fuzz really inspired me today by this view, this vision of what's possible with diamond mining and artisanal small-scale guys. And for us, me, in the same way, I think mercury is a tremendous issue that we have as an industry, we've just not sufficiently faced. That 20 million people use it every day still, and have for centuries. And we are, I don't know if we're complacent, but we certainly haven't spoken up about it. But we are seeing change. We're seeing GIA and JCK Industry Fund, and people are saying, yes, we need to address this. My vision is that the industry could say no more. We are going to get together, maybe create a fund, address this as an industry, as a problem, potential problem, but as a magnificent opportunity to be proactive, to be inclusive, to bold and to lead the way in a way that our customers already want. So that's what I see as that possibility.
That could definitely go on the manifesto. Wouldn't it be fun if we could get the whole JCK industry fund just dedicated to like direct to the mine beneficiation to eliminate mercury? I mean,
It's getting close. It is.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, because we're educating them too, and that's part of it.
That would be great.
Not a lot of people in that world knew what was happening here. So the more we talk to them, the more they can then say, oh, my money should be going this way. So another important piece of conversation to have.
Oh, yeah, do Pauline and then Julie and then after that.
And then a couple of mics need to make it back up to us.
Oh, yes, right.
Because they're all gone.
I gave them away. Thank you very much. You know, from yesterday, I've appreciated one thing that in this meeting, you know, there's really a big concern about ASM, and which is actually the main source of the stones. But the real issue I know is to get the right stones. The right stones is a problem. And the problem being that from the source, being ASM, a lot of people are not able to access the right stones. And one of the issues that has been raised here is not being able not to comply to responsible mining. And the reason being that they're not able to, much as they would like to comply, but their financial muscle cannot allow. So I would like to find out, I would like to have is it take home? Then how can we increase or enhance the productivity from the source? Because that's what is most important. Because at the moment, I just want to give an example of Africa. You know, when buyers come there, they will not get the quantity that they need. Sometimes even the quality that they need. So how do we improve the quality and also increase the quantity? I think that's something that we need to talk about it, because no, I'm looking forward to a time when there will be something that we'll call a model ASM operation. We need that. So that model can be replicated in all these countries where there's ASM. Thank you.
I think we have Julie. Do you want to talk to that or speak to that, or?
No, I was going to ask who's next.
Okay, Julie, and I think maybe after that.
Thank you, Susan. My comment is also about the connectivity between us. And I actually wanted to talk about the connectivity of the people in this room right now. I only spoke to a few of you. I actually don't know what most of you do. But I can guarantee that every single person in this room is a passionate, heart-centered person who's probably an expert in something super useful. And I'm an expert in stuff that's super useful that you guys might not be an expert in. So what I would love, and maybe you can do this on the conference website, instead of just an email list that's kind of not as useful, it'd be so cool if it was like, here's my name, here's what I do, but more importantly, this is what I can share right now with you. This is what I'm an expert in. So if you need to know who knows about this, get in touch with me. I think that would be something that could be potentially super useful.
We can definitely put, so we're talking about some community information, and we can definitely put it up on the website. We just need everybody to get in there and actually use it. And then we can have our own sort of like panel of subject matter experts that we know. This is the person who has these contacts and these expertises, and then we can combine our energies. It's very easy for us to spin that up. But it'll just be a cute little piece of technology unless you all get in there and populate it.
So I can, well, it's not me, but I can offer, if we don't have the technology.
We have it.
We do.
Oh, yeah, it's basic, yeah.
WJA has it, and we have these groups, and we could probably set up a group within, under.
But then it's under WJA.
But it's just collaboration, it's not competition.
No, I don't mean it that way. In that particular one, the Chicago conference exists and has the technology, and this is part of our activity, and that's where we want it. So it's not competition, it just is.
So really quick, I just wanted to kind of echo what was your name?
Alyssa.
No, her, sorry.
What about Pauline? Yeah?
Yes. Pauline. So I think it ties into what he was saying also about the power of jewelers, and nothing happens until that value, you guys create that value. And I think important that most times when the lens that we look at the jewelry is the diamond in terms of clarity, those are things create value for it, right? So then you can market it. And I think what was important to me, the lesson I learned also was that within the African landscape is that there's not the infrastructures to funding, to make ASM activities fruitful. And if that is not it, then it actually cripples jewelers to be able to put the best stones out in the world. So it is the quintessential characteristics of the program of ASM. And so I just wanted to touch on that because that is crucial in terms of what she was saying and highlight that. And the power of journalists to be able to create in ways that ASM can get the right funding, the right equipment, all this so that they can be able to access the best stones, the best so that then demand wants that. And that's the best thing we can do for the industry. And just in closing, for me, I think the last three things was like how this idea as how we work together is this notion. I think I talked about this with Martin. Scale up. How do we scale up, scale wide, and scale deep? And scale deep really begins to think about how we go down and help with the ASM. Scale wide is what we are trying to do here, how we work together. And scale up is what you talked about, the SCE, and how we can begin to do that. I think those framing can begin to build the foundations in moving forward.
Absolutely. And you're speaking to something that I think about a lot, which is transforming our concepts of what supply chains are, because supply chains are very much structured systemically as verticals. And we need horizontals. And nobody's doing good work on that at this point. And somebody might as well do it, so it could come from in here. But we need a different approach to systemic supply chain management. And then people can access goods and actually get them to market. One more, Christina, and then.
Yeah. I have 3 points.
Of course you do. With an A and C under E.
Yes, no, just actually, there's only one A. Anyways. So 3 points. First, PACT and a few others have been thinking about living wage in ASM communities. I'm calling it a living income for kind of some technical reasons because it's not hourly, it's like jewelry, it's based on the product, right? So I'm happy to share ideas and our direction. There's a variety of methodologies that you can use that have already been developed that are actually very context specific and not a bunch of us sitting in an office just deciding for people. So happy to share. Second, I guess it's building off of Faz's point and Mama Pauline's point about how Cecilia Gardner often calls the minds your business partners, right? And not just suppliers, your business partners. And I guess to get the kind of change that Mama Pauline was talking about, that Faz was talking about, we had to really focus on getting support to them. And as I mentioned yesterday, not having this swell of research reports and this conflict minerals industrial complex, this climate change industrial complex, making sure we actually send resources to the field instead of just talking about them. and working with them on a variety of solutions. There's a lot of different things you can do to help mines become greener and communities become more resilient in a number of ways. So happy to add texture to that if anybody wants some free advice. Oh, that's the start. And the last thing, I guess maybe it could be a good closing for you, could be, for manifestos, it's always useful to action them. And so my suggestion is like a committee, because I'd love to set up for the Diamond Origin Committee. So that's my small suggestion to that.
That's a good suggestion. That's why I want to hold on to the technology, because I don't want to wait for somebody else to develop the pieces that allow us to communicate and wait for some committee to agree to add some piece to the puzzle. So we can set up a community, we can have room for there to be committees, we can put our roadmap out there as a group, just like we do in tech, and say this is the roadmap, this is what we're working on. Then we can use that roadmap to vote on next steps. All of that is possible within this context. It's just we all need to get in it to do it. If you have other things for the manifesto, you all have mine and Susan's and Brandy's email addresses probably. If you don't, ask us, send it in. What we'll do is put this all together and send it out for comment.
Awesome.
Okay, and then we'll tighten it up and we'll get it out there. And make sure that we're working not just once a year at a Chicago Responsible Jewelry Conference, but trying to keep a continuum of activity going that we've all agreed as a community is, stuff we need to work on.